Oh, hey, come on in. Let's go talk about pocket knives. Hey guys, Southern Knife Hobbyist with you again, bringing you another knife that's been sent to me by a viewer. This one is sent by a guy who goes by the nickname Dirty Bobby. He's out of Kentucky, and this is a knife that was his father's knife that he's inherited, and he wants it rehandled. The handles are starting to shrink and come up on this. This one is a Jim Bowie Premium Stockman. The tank stamp says Jim Bowie in Germany. From the research I was able to do on this, these knives were made by Friedrich Olberts, which is a very good knife company out of Germany. All the blades are tight and snappy. Everything seems to be in good condition with this knife. The only problem we see, of course, there's some scratches on the blades from use because it's, he's done the right thing with it. It's been used. But with these handles shrinking, they're getting in worse shape, and he wants it rehandled in buffalo horn. So we're going to try to take care of that for him. I'd like to videotape these little pre-inspections now. It's easier to do it now and take a little more time with it at home, maybe in evenings or whatever, than it is to do it in the knife shop, and I'm able to do a little more thorough introduction to the knife. So, Dirty Bobby, thanks for sending me this knife of your dad's. We're going to be respectful of it, take good care of it, and see how pretty we can make it with those buffalo horn handles. Thank all of you for joining me for this episode. Let's dig into this and let's have fun with this knife. I had some trouble with my overhead camera, so we're taking this from a side shot, and I'm just able to pry these handles off as the plastic has begun to get soft as it shrunk.
Well, so far so good. All right.
I'm clipping the handle pins in two and letting the inside end fall out into the blade well. Dirty Bob said he wanted this rehandled in buffalo horn. I happen to have a great piece in stock, so I'll cut it up into usable bits now. I try to select the flattest pieces to use. Now, flat is a relative term with horn. It's rarely as flat as you want it to be. With some horn, you can boil it and then flatten it out between two plates of wood or plates of steel and let it dry, and it may remain that way from now on. I've not tried that with buffalo horn, and it's much thicker than most cattle horn that I've tried. In fact, it's thick enough that I'll try to just sand it flat and not worry about the curling and having it pop loose later on a humid day. I believe that this piece is wide enough that I may cut off the curled ends, split it right down the center, and be able to make both scales from this one piece of horn. As you can see from this shot, this piece of horn is still way too curved to fit flat up against the liner, so I'll begin by sanding the inside edge until it is nearly flat. When I turn the piece up to look at it, you're starting to see how that curved portion in the center or the inside edge keeps getting smaller each time. Now, I will not sand that away entirely, as it would make the ends too thin to fit the bolsters, but I'll take out as much as I can, and that tiny bubble that you see on the inside will be left filled up with glue at the end. Now, once I get the first scale finished, I'll thin down the second one the same way. I'll cut the center pin now, which I failed to do earlier. Then I tried to pull it out with the cutters, but though it cuts easily enough, it's still firmly in place, and it'll have to be driven out by a hammer and punch. Now I'm selecting which piece will be on the mark side and which one on the pile side. Then I'll sand them down for a tighter fit. I've marked out the scale along the edges of the liner, and now I'm sanding it down to that line. I'm pre-fitting and pre-hafting these scales before I install them on the liners. I've only done this technique a couple of times before, so it takes me a bit longer, but the results are definitely worth it. Okay, Bible time. There are a lot of people who have questions. Questions such as, why are there so many bad Christians? Or why does it seem like that a lot of church people are just sinners? Or even questions like, can God still love someone who's not always a good person? Well, the answer to that is absolutely God can. You see, God uses broken and sinful people because there aren't any other kind. Romans chapter 3 verse 23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." That means no one is righteous, folks. That means that no one is perfect except for Jesus himself. No one, not one person, has ever been good enough to get into heaven. You see, some people seem to think that God will one day compare all of our good works to all of our bad works and judge us on whether or not we get into heaven based upon which there's more of, good or bad. But the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible tells us that no sin at all can enter into God's presence. And since none of us are without sin, the only way we can have eternal life is for that sin to be washed away. You can never be good enough, but you can be forgiven. And you can be forgiven by placing your faith truly in the Lord Jesus Christ and in Him alone. Now I'll sand the liners clean by hand. These actually look fairly good. Dirt and oil tend to build up beneath handle scales, and it'll cause the brass liners to tarnish and prevent the glue from sticking. I'm preparing to drill for the handle pins. I'm using a drill bit through the pivot hole to keep the scale in place, but I keep checking that the ends are lined up as well. It would be a disaster now if the scale were to move out of place when I drill one hole and then the other wouldn't line up. Now I'm preparing my 4 handle pins by filing a small V onto the inside end with a triangle file. This helps the pen to flare outward on the inside once I pin it down through the handle and liner. And when I file one a little too off-centered, I just flatten it and start over. There's still a small curved dimple in the center of each scale where the curvature was too great to sand it out completely. It's not that deep, but I'm being sure to fill it up completely with glue first, then spreading a thin layer over the rest of the scale. If the edge of that space were to be exposed after my final sanding, I don't want a hole to show. Instead, you'll just see glue filling that up and it'll blend in perfectly and be invisible. I'm using small drill bits to keep the holes in the scales in perfect alignment with the holes in the liners. The drill chuck not only grips that bit tightly and helps me to remove it easily, but it also helps clean out any leftover glue that might have gotten in that pinhole. Here, I'm using one of my needle files to scrape out any globs of glue that might have gotten on the inside of the liners. Surprisingly, it makes a huge difference. A small drop that hardens on the inside of the liner will cause the blades to stick or just stop from closing entirely. I'm also scraping off the excess glue that's dried up on the bolsters. This usually gets in the way during sanding, so I decided to take care of it now. I'm installing a new 180 grit belt on my sander to begin the finish sanding of these scales. Now, I pre-sanded the contours and hafted the scales before I installed them, but left them just a little bit oversized. This is the point where I sand them down to match the rest of the knife frame perfectly. This is also the step where I begin smoothing those scales from the rough grit sanding belts that I used earlier. Now, horn is much softer than bone, and sometimes softer even than wood, so I'll hand sand it with a 400 grit sandpaper to smooth those lines together. And I wet sand it because that really helps to bring out the shine later on after I polish the handles. I'll also sand the bolsters just a little bit, but mainly to smooth that transition between the bolster and the scale. Now I'll install those handle pins that I made. This buffalo horn really has a dull appearance after sanding, and it's difficult to believe that we're almost finished with this knife. But you'll see in a bit, polishing these scales will make a huge difference in the way they look. Since this center pin is located on a curved part of the handle scale, I will file the end of the pin at an angle to match that curvature. This way, when the pin is finally pinned, it won't be sticking out real far on the bottom edge. And after just a few seconds on the polisher, this knife's already looking better. Well, all right, YouTube, here is that Jim Bowie Stockman, and man, it turned out good. So, all my blades and all still look good. The edge is still fairly prominent on that. But the buffalo horn turned out nice. It's good and smooth, which is what he wanted. Now here we've got a little bit of the texture from the exterior of the horn that's shown through. I did try to sand that out, but it ran very deep into the horn. So though I sanded and sanded, it never took all of that out. But horn is a natural material, and occasionally with natural organic materials, you have certain flaws that actually just lends a little charm and character to it. And I like the way it looks. I certainly hope he does. I believe he'll be happy with it. Turned out very good. So, and the name, I think on the introduction, I kept saying Dirty Bobby. It was Dirty Bob was the nickname he uses, from Kentucky. And Bob, thank you so much for sending me this knife to work on. I know it was your dad's knife. I've tried to respect it in that way, and look forward to doing business with you in the future. Thank you for trusting me with your dad's knife. I pray God would just bless you richly. Until next time, we'll see you then. Take care. Goodbye.